Hey guys, Ill Factor from Beat Academy here, and today I've got a sweet video on mixing for you. This video is taken from my new updated mixing course, Breakthrough Mixing and Mastering. And it's the first part of a mixing walkthrough where I show you how I build a great mix by making the right production decisions before I even start mixing a track that I'm working on. This is a concept that will help you produce better arrangements and sounds in your tracks while making it easier for you to mix your songs when you're done producing them. And if you'd like to check out the whole course, I'm currently holding a massive launch discount where you can get the course for a huge 50% discount. So be sure to check out the course at beatacademy.com/mixing. Inside the course, I teach you everything you need to know about mixing from a producer's perspective and how to get great mixes in your current studio setup, no matter what genre of music you make. It's a huge resource that will simplify mixing for any artist and producer out there. So if you enjoyed this video, you can get the full details on Breakthrough Mixing and Mastering at the link below in the description box. So we just went through my process of mixing a project from the ground up. And although that particular project was an instance where I received stems from an artist and I'm putting my own personal fingerprint sonically on it, and all those principles in every step of the process that I share with you are the same processes that I apply even when mixing my own projects. It's a little different when you're working with stems, someone else's music, than producing, writing, and recording, and then trying to mix your own projects and then master it, right? There's a different perspective there, almost a different mindset that needs to take place. So I want to talk a little bit about that and how I go about that incorporating the mixing process almost immediately into the sound design and the production process of my normal workflow. So I'm here now in Ableton Live 11. Now, Ableton Live is my wheelhouse. This is where I do all of my breakdancing. This is just my workflow is just so much quicker here in Ableton Live, both creatively on the writing side and production, and also in the mixing and recording side. So I'm doing everything all in the box completely here in Ableton Live. So here's a song that I've produced, and this is called Get Me Out, featuring artist Taryn Manning. And the whole session you could find here. And what I mean by produce is that unlike the other session where stems, all the processing, all the effects have been printed, exported, and then sent over to me, this still has all the effect processing on there. And that's part of the sound design. The sound design means that I'm choosing specific plugins and treatment of the sound. I'm creating the sonic landscape for each individual sound the way I hear it in my head to get the end result. So I'm just going to play you a little bit from verse 2 so you can get a little feel of what we're working with there and walk through some of the prime principles that go into the mixing while you produce.
Through the sound of all the city nights, you're vibrating through my mind. I still hear the sound of you. I don't need to know what's right or wrong. See, your reasons take too long. The truth is that I'm waiting for the next surprise to come. All the while I've been crying out, come back to me, back to me. And all the while I've been crying out, it's tragedy, but I don't want this. Give me up, I'm falling deeper, baby. Dangerous, dangerous, this is your water, and I'm so in love, and I don't wanna be left, and I don't want this.
So it's got this synthwave type of vibe to it. As you can see, I was just kind of touring around my whole session, how I have things organized and broken down. And so one thing we also have to implement. Now, there's a stage in my normal production process where I'll pull up a sound, drag in an audio loop, or use a preset patch or whatever it is, whatever's sparking the creativity. In this case, for this particular song, it just so happened to be the bass line. So I was combing through some patches and I found a really cool bass sound, and I started just adding an arpeggiated rhythm to this, and just created a simple beat around that. When I was sitting here with the artist, we were just talking, having conversations about like where we wanted to go artistically, and she was really feeling the synth wave type vibe. So I kind of started knowing production wise where to go in that direction. But what I'm trying to say is, when I implement sounds and I put them in there, I keep in mind the whole gain staging concept. Now, it's important that you don't get lost in the technical stuff. You don't want the gain staging. You don't want all well, I've got to, I've got to use an EQ and cut off all the low end, or I got to do some stereo imaging. Don't get hung up on that at the very beginning. Just create. Get lost in the creative process. Don't let any of the technical mumbo jumbo and the technical jargon hinder you from writing great, inspiring music. That's the problem sometimes, is that we get paralysis by analysis and we don't even begin to like, well, I don't know. Don't spend 8 hours tweaking the snare drum. Just find another snare drum that works and then move on. That's so important in the production stage. Just get to writing, do what needs to be done. And when it's done, then you can go ahead and just kind of gauge, take a moment. I normally like to just, once I've got the production and I've got the general arrangement and the vocals and, just the song kind of there, then I kind of just step back and be like, okay, if I'm going to mix it, I want to, separate my mind, because I've been producing it, hearing it all day. I'm going crazy. So I'll go ahead and mix it another day, or I'll come back in with it with fresh ears. And that's when I go back and kind of just do the gain staging and mix your level. So one thing I'm talking about here with gain staging is, so for instance, I've imported a kick drum sample. That's what we start with, right, for the drums. And as you notice here, if I select this waveform, say I just drag them and kick this waveform, I've brought the gain down minus 9.55 dB. Why would I do that? Well, because at 0, if we just go ahead and zero this out, right? That's how loud that kick drum is. That's the kick drum sample. And typically, if you're using kick drum samples or just samples in general, they're all normalized, they're all saturated and been, limited. And so they're all pretty much at 0 dB. If I went ahead and played just this kick drum alone, let's take all the plugins I have on this kick, let's take it off. This is important here. And let's put this at 0 dB. I'm going to take everything I have on my master out. And do I have anything on the mouse? Oh, yeah. So I probably have the drum bus. Drum group needs to come up. Okay. So I'm just going to put that 0. Kick drum bus here. I'm going to have to basically bypass all the plugins on this chain. But look at that kick drum. It's slamming at 0 dB. How much more room am I going to have for everything else in the track to live with? So I do some gain staging. I just kind of go over here, and that's where I did the whole, it was just a random number. I just 9.55. Oops, I put in the sense. I want to go to the gain minus 9. You can just round it off. Do a minus 10. That's probably a great place to start. Minus 10, really good. Or minus 10, minus 12. And for example, when you drag things into Ableton Live Simpler, by default, they bring the volume down by negative 12. And so if you're always like, man, why do they do that? Well, because they're gain staging automatically for you. They're making sure that the samples you load into your simplers to re-trigger them won't go ahead and clip any of the plugins. Now, if you're clipping some of these stock plugins, you're not going to get that much of a reaction. But to get some optimal sweet spots with certain plugins, you don't want to be clipping those plugins. So that's what I mean by the gain staging. So in the sound designing process, so I'll get the kick drum the way I like it. I'll bring the audio down, and then and that's a good point for me to start. Okay, like if I brought that kick down that much, but I didn't do it in the production process, I brought it down that much when I'm ready to mix it. And now I can start beefing up the characteristics that I want from that kick. So a lot of the things that I've got going on is just I have a kick bus because I'm layering I'm layering two kicks together. I wanted to use one for the thump, and I want one just for the bottom beef. And I put those together, and then I just run them through a drum group, which is gonna have the snare and the claps and all those things to kind of tie that up. And then I have another bus here because in Ableton Live, you can group and similar to having a bus on an auxiliary track and just adding a little bit of some saturation here with the Fab Filter Saturn. And so now what I want to make sure that I'm doing is as I start to do this, as I start to group things and add them, I don't want to clip my groups. I want to now gauge more or less some healthy settings, right? And I can, because I don't want my kick bus to clip my drum group. Let's just solo the drum group here. I want to have a healthy balance, and that's where we go into gain staging everything here. I'm not thinking about this when I'm producing and writing. I'm just putting samples down, getting the groove right, getting it. But what does take place in the midst of production is some sound design things that do help end up shaping the sound. And that's that push and pull. That's that balance that you're gonna have to mature into. So for instance, like with the bass, a lot of things that I'm doing here with this bass, I've got a sub bass, and I did this in the actual production process. I've got my top bass here, and that is a combination with the Poly 6 and my Serum. And then I have another bass here. And I'll use plugins to carve out or bring certain things and bring them up and things like that. And then sound selection with patches and presets. So for instance, here's this mini V from Arturia. Let me just go to the section here. Aren't clipping as well. So I can bring those down, and you could use something as simple as like maybe a utility plugin and bring the gain down. Creating that part, I'm thinking in my mind, I want a little pulsing, so I'll compress it a little bit so that certain notes that I'm playing won't jump out. I'm gonna EQ this a little bit. The EQ was added not during the production stage, but on the in the mixing part when I came in with fresh ears to determine I can carve a little bit of low end here. This was a decision in the mixing stage. These two are decisions in the production sound design stage. So this was a cool little RC20 by Excellent Audio. I put there to get some dirt, some wideness. Make it really cool and vintagey. And then I've got the Kickstart by Naked Romero just to add some pulse action as well. And this would constitute the sound itself. That is the sound that I wanted, me personally, in my writing, that paints the picture that I'm going for this song. And then I can go ahead and add this EQ here or afterwards. I left it here because I guess I didn't want any of the low end to be processed through this plugin. And that's it. So I make that kind of decision. I make those calls in the part of how do I blend and balance all this together. Well, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And if you'd like to watch the rest of this walkthrough and discover how to mix your productions to a professional standard where they're ready to be mastered and released, then be sure to check out my mixing course, Breakthrough Mixing and Mastering, at beatacademy.com/mixing. Inside this course, you'll be shown how to properly mix your raw productions into finished mixes ready for mastering and release. Also, you get access to 4 other mixing walkthroughs where I mix songs in genres like pop, rock, EDM, and hip hop. I cover mixing drums, bass, vocals, using effects like reverb, delay, and much, much more. If you've ever struggled with mixing your own music, I highly recommend you check out this course. With what you'll learn inside, you'll be able to start getting better mixes in far less time without any frustration or confusion. I'm currently holding a huge 50% launch discount that will be ending soon. So get the full details on the course at beatacademy.com/mixing. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you in the course.